Welcome to our session 2 around the AI-powered IT finance, the expert conversations on transforming IT financial management practices. We are back. Welcoming again Nancy Braun. Thank you, Nancy, for joining us again, and Dr. Alexander Becker from ServiceWare and Nancy from Thavron. Today, we are wanting to shift into the gear of where we actually do some planning. Last session, we talked about the vision on AI in IT finance. Today, we want to do a little bit more on planning, and particularly relative to planning, there are some challenges, and we'll talk a little bit about those challenges. And then most important, because that's why we have both Alex and Nancy with us, is how can you overcome these challenges? That's really you guys' specialties and expertise. So on the challenges, there are, of course, many challenges, but we want to hone in on 3 particular challenges. The first one is around data. Data. That's a favorite topic of everybody. Then we'll hone in on a second challenge around governance and risks. And last but not least, culture, skills, and so on. There are, of course, challenges around cost of AI. Certainly, that is something interesting, but we decided to hone in on these 3 challenges. So my first question, actually, Nancy, goes to you. It is around the data challenges. Why is it so difficult in the finance team that they have these data challenges? One would think that in the finance team who deal with data every day, that they have an easier journey on data. But what is the challenge there? And then related in terms of AI, what does that mean?
So I think the data challenge is kind of 3-pronged, and a lot of it is the cobbler's children, right? Where they're working on everybody else's data and fulfilling everybody else's needs, but haven't necessarily had the time or resources to focus on their own. But sometimes it's an access problem. So often financial data is held in a corporate finance system. IT finance doesn't own that data, although they may be inputting it in. And if they haven't implemented an ITFM platform yet, the only way they have access to that data is through a corporate finance team or through specialized access requests. And in some organizations, that's very easy. And in other organizations, it's very challenging. So just getting access to the basic financial information historically, because we're going to want to go back a few years as we start to talk about the models and what their needs are. And so access. The other is organizations shift and change, and that often happens in a flurry, and the translation of cost center changes from one to another or account changes from one to another, and understanding over the course of multiple years how to link those together so that you have a coherent picture is often very challenging. And IT finance will sometimes go, okay, we're just drawing a line here. It's hard to translate from 2021 to 2022. So now we're going to report from 2022 forward. And we have historical reporting, and we're still going to show that, but I can't do a direct translation of the cost centers from the previous year to this year because we made such a huge organizational change. And so that is sometimes very challenging. Now, I will say with an ITFM platform in place, that becomes much easier because, again, you can tag those costs, you can keep those together, right? And then the third problem is operational data. So it's not just financial data, but operational data, which again, IT finance doesn't own. So they're dependent upon things like the CMDB or asset management systems or the depreciation management systems or all the other systems that are owned by other people that they need inputs from. And so they are trying to build insights from data that lots of other people own that are critical to them, but may not be factors that are critical to the people who own those systems.
So that sounds very multidimensional in terms of ownership, in terms of access, in terms of federation, in terms of agility, right? Forward backwards looking and then of course forward looking. Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, in terms of getting ready for AI and adopting AI in terms of from a platform perspective and from a vendor perspective, what needs to be done? What can you share in terms of how do these teams clean up? What can they do relative to before introducing AI on the data side?
That strongly depends on the use case. You might be surprised. For certain use cases, my answer would be nothing. Yeah, so it could just be around starting immediately when you apply use cases in the large language model area. So, for example, using AI to help you define service descriptions or to help you summarize certain textual informations. Or then moving on, a common use case is have AI support with knowledge information. Then you can start building a knowledge base, documenting best practices, rules, and policies you have in your organization. They can more or less start immediately, and you can grow the knowledge base over time and leverage an AI assistant to support controllers or different stakeholders in analysis from a qualitative perspective. So that is an easy start. If we're looking at more complex yet more fruitful use cases of data analytics, predictive planning, then obviously you need to have your financial data in a certain shape. Or maybe it's not so much the shape, it's actually the volume, because to train the modules, you need a certain volume of data in the breadth, so to cover all of the also edge cases that might exist. Yeah, you cannot just take one service, for example, and work with it, but you should maybe apply it across your whole service portfolio. And from our experience, to get good results, particularly in terms of prediction, predictive forecasting, and anomaly detection, you need a certain history of data. That means 3 years, I would recommend, the last 3 fiscal years as a baseline to train the model is a good rule of thumb. Yeah? The more, the better. Can also work with less, but obviously if I only feed the machine 1 year of history and want to get a good prediction on the next 5, then I might need to be a bit more realistic on what is the quality of the outcome. And the better data set I can provide, the better obviously I can train the model, the better results I can expect. So it depends which use case you're looking at, and the more advanced use cases require more advanced preparation in data.
Honing in on that preparation of data, who needs to be part of all of that? I mean, again, you cannot say it depends because it does depend, but there is a broad set of folks, right? If we're talking asset, we need an asset manager. If we're talking operational data, we need folks from the ops space. Is there a best case scenario where you say, okay, these people need to be working together and collaborating on this? Alex, back to your point.
But as Nan rightfully outlined, the challenge with IT Finance is little, if not actually zero data they're working with is actually owned by the IT Finance team itself. Yeah? So IT Finance is a function that consolidates data from different sources in the enterprise and aggregates it, yeah, and then creates a model out of it and results out of it. So obviously, you always need the people who own the source data. Yeah? So if you obviously need the last 3 years of actual spend on your cost centers, you better get somebody on board who knows in your ERP solution where this data resides and how to extract it and how to feed it to the model. If you need somebody who knows the CMDB because you want to work with AI and your asset data, then you need a person or persons from that team, obviously. Yeah? And obviously, you should also involve somebody from data security and compliance team, because applying AI solution often means giving data to a third-party provider, right? So AI model provider. And then it should be carefully evaluated that this is in line with corporate policies and guidelines, what is feasible, and know what happens with the data, which data to put where. So I think these are the 2 most relevant groups, obviously the owners of the source data, and then somebody from data governance and security out of the organization to help you advise how you can leverage the data into an AI solution.
Great. You already mentioned the next challenge, governance. That is another one. We have multiple governance models across, and we see them depending on what maturity level these organizations are. But Nancy, in terms of governance and risk, there's always a balance between how much, how little, how fast, how slow, right? That's the circle. But what have you seen from an governance model, from an organizational governance model relative to the adoption of AI? How is that made into reality, and what models are actually useful, and what do you see?
So what you want to do is not create specific governance just for IT finance or just for AI in IT finance. You want to plug into governance for any other application or implementation that you would have within IT. And I think this ties back to overcoming the challenges of data as well. So most organizations have a CAB or a change approval board. And IT finance is usually very divorced from that. But now they're going to own and use applications, AI models, just like if they had an IT finance management platform, right? Like now they become application owners, so they have to plug into the governance that is approved and in place for their organization. And because they're dependent upon the data from many other groups, then they should also be making sure that they are plugged into that organizational change approval process as people to be notified. So if there's going to be a change to the CMDB that's going to impact them, they should get notified. If there's going to be a change to the asset management system, they're going to be notified. But in the same way, they can give feedback. So we're talking about how hard it is to get the data. But the truth is that if the data is important and has value to the people who own it, the changes can happen very quickly. So if I can do a shift and tell a story, we had a case where we worked with a client and they wanted to get the CMDB data, and the CMDB owner was like, look, I got to tell you, I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't want to give you this data because the application owners haven't updated it. I've been working with them for almost 2 years. I can't get them to manually input this data. It just has a lot of gaps. There's a lot of problems here. So we said, okay, well, IT finance really needs this. Tell us what you need to. We'll go with kind of a unified ask to the application owners as we're doing this. And we told the application owners, we're going to use this data to derive the cost of the application and come up with unit rates. If it's not up to date, then the cost is going to show incorrectly, and you're going to have to answer questions about that. And so putting dollars to data gaps, being able to say not just, hey, I'm missing 30% of these relationships, but that 30% of the relationships is driving a $60 million gap, and being able to explain the dollars is a whole lot more powerful. And then pointed out to the fact that as a result of filling this in, and the result of the work that the IT finance group was going to do in modeling, then they would then be able to see on demand their current application TCO and their rates, which was something that was very hard for them to get. So driving value and finding the value for those system owners and putting dollars to that data within the structure of the existing governance process are things that can give you access to data more quickly and can help the organization as a whole clean up and fill in the gaps of the data that's important for decision making.
Great example on the CMDB. The CMDB, yeah, the truth or non-truth of the CMDB. Excellent. All right. I want to shift to, unless Alex, you have anything to add to what Nan said. If not, I'll shift to culture and skills. That, again, if I speak to CIOs and C-levels, talking about upskilling and all of that, is front of their minds. But it's with every technology change, it feels like it is there. But my question to you, and I'll start with you again, Nancy. What level, what skills do you advise your clients relative to this AI? What should they do? What should they learn? If I'm a practitioner now sitting in IT finance and I'm listening to, and I'm like, yes, I'm ready to go. What should I know? What should I do? What should I learn?
So the first thing is start where you are. Most people will say, yes, I'm ready to learn, but they really don't even know what the problem is that they think they want to solve, right? Like, define first your use cases and the potential value to your organization. Don't start with the technology and what it can do, but start with the problems you want to solve, and then look at how the technology could potentially provide value to helping solve that problem. In AI, just experiments with technology can get very expensive very fast. And so you want to make sure that anything that you're doing is tied to a business value and is solving a business problem, or presenting a new opportunity to the IT finance team or to the business at large, that wasn't possible without AI. So start with your value questions, not with learning the technology.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good pivot to you, Alex, in terms of ServiceWare and the automation tool. And as a vendor, from a vendor perspective, what do you, or I should say, we have to offer to our clients in terms of skills and upskilling? Anything?
Obviously, the introduction of each AI capability needs to come with education. And it's interestingly, in that case, not so much a technical education, because the AI components are fairly easy to use. They're often the push of a button. Yeah? You feed some data into a slot and you get an answer. You push a button, create a forecast, and you get a result. Yeah? And so it's not very difficult to operate, but it's very difficult to understand for that reason, because it feels kind of like a black box. And therefore, we invest in educating our clients. How does the AI work? What are the principles behind it? We try to invest in explainability, so create documentation and output. Why has the AI delivered a certain result? What are the intervals of confidence of such a result? What is the risk margin and KPIs around it? And obviously, we also offer services to help the client with the organizational change, or the mindset change that also needs to go along with that, because the whole working with AI needs a bit a different approach than the classic way of handling data. You need to be open to iterate. Yeah, so you can't expect the first time right result. And for the first time in computer science in my career, it's not given that if then else always you get the same result. Yeah, if you run an algorithm today and you run it again tomorrow, or maybe even an hour later, you get slightly different outcome. And that's reasonable and understandable for the way these models work. They are not deterministic, right? It's the big change of AI in general. And you need clients to have understand it, because obviously they're used to getting the output of a software of a calculation every time the same. If they run it again and again and again, with AI that changes. And with AI, it means sometimes maybe also I need to run 3, 4, 5 scenarios, and then as a human take the decision, what is the output that fits best to my business case. And that's a totally different way of working than before, and we can assist client with our experience on that journey.
Super. Let me wrap up quickly what I heard. So I heard on the data side, because of the ownership, there needs to be a collaborative approach and understanding what is it we actually want to achieve, tying into the topic of governance. We need to bring ourselves into, if you are in IT finance and adopting AI, so it's tagging onto the existing governance already existing. If not, maybe you kick it off. Why not, right? And then last but not least, on the skills, honing your skills, be patient, iterating, learning, either from ServiceWare or connecting with Thavron or other resources in terms of that. Excellent. So I have a pointer here for listeners to the white paper, which has additional details. You can scan the QR code. And then last but not least, the call to action. If you want to connect either with Alex or Nancy, here are their LinkedIn connections. Feel free to reach out to them. Here you can also book a call via email with Nancy, and if you like an assessment, she's offering a free assessment to get your IT finance maturity score. Thank you again, Nancy and Alex. Very educational, good pointers, and I wish you a great rest of the hour. Thank you so much.